Hello. So we're working on ways of solving quadratics, and so far we've learned how to solve by factoring, solve by square roots, and today we're going to learn a method that can be used for any quadratic, regardless of if there's a bx or if there's a c, that kind of thing. It works for them all, but it's best when ... and those dots will be filled in today. And that method is called completing the square. So 9.3, solving quadratics, complete the square. So when we're talking about completing the square, we're actually talking about creating a perfect square trinomial. So we're going to define some things. The whole point of this process is you're going to turn your quadratic equation that they give you into a perfect square trinomial, factor, and then solve. There we go. So when you complete the square, okay, it's a process. It's not necessarily vocab. So, if you're asking what color, pink, blue, both, maybe, I don't know. Okay, but it's a process. So what it is, you are turning x squared plus bx, whatever it is, okay? You're going to turn this into x squared plus bx plus c as a perfect square trinomial. Okay, so it's a process. When you complete the square, you're making what we call a new c, and I'm going to be talking about that. And then whatever this is with your new c, this now becomes a perfect square trinomial, meaning that c is a perfect square. Okay? Now, to find this new c, you're going to take half of b and square it. Okay. So when I talk about completing the square, it's a process. So that's why I was saying, pink, blue kind of thing, because it's important, but it's not necessarily vocab. This is how you're going to find your new c. And the process looks weird. Kids in the past have said, it's not weird, it's just the steps are easy, I think is what they remember. But that's going to be up to you guys to decide on that, okay? All right, so here we go. First example, what we're going to do is we're going to work on finding our new c, and then plugging it in, and then factoring. So example 1, it's actually called complete the square. Okay, it's not going to say find the new c, but when it says complete the square, that's what you're doing. So complete the square, which is your indication as a new c. Complete the square, i.e. new c, and factor. Oh, then factor, whatever. Okay, like I told you, we are not done with the F word. All right. So here we go. We have x squared plus 6x, okay? So that's how they give it to you. But what I do is I do a plus and I do a line, because that's what you're going to be doing. You're filling in this part. So if you don't like a line, you could put a box there, whatever, okay? So we're going to find out what makes x squared plus 6x into a perfect square by finding this new c. So here we go. Remember, a, b, and c are just the numbers in your quadratic equation. So we have c equals half of b, and then square it. So I put my little formula there first. And then so we have c equals b is 6. We're going to take half of that, then square it. So c equals, make sure you do your parentheses first, order of operations. So half of 6 is 3 squared. And 3 squared is 9. So when you complete the square, your new c then becomes 9. You just completed the square. You turned this part, x squared plus bx, into a perfect square trinomial, okay? And now what we're going to do is we're going to factor this. So you have to look at x squared plus 6x plus 9 and figure out how to factor, which hopefully you said ninja star. All right, remember it's a times c at the top. A is 1 times 9, 9. B goes at the bottom. AX and AX right here, so X and X. So what are the factors of 9 that add up to 6? And remember, B and C are both positive, so it tells you both factors are positive. So we have 3 and 3. And if you did this correct, you will get the same binomial, because the whole point of this is you're going to have a perfect square trinomial. So the factors are going to be the same. So when you factor this, you get the quantity x plus 3 squared. So your two answers for this: when you complete the square, that is your new C. And then factor it. When you write it, you want to write the answer as a square of a binomial. But there's a little something I want you to keep track of. Keep your eye on it. And that is that right there. That number right here, when you take half of b and square it, that becomes your factor right here. And since it's a perfect square trinomial, it's going to be the same, whether they're both positive or both negative. So just keep your eye on this number right here. Okay? All right, let's do a couple more. I'm going to erase all this. You know, it's funny, I was looking on all these YouTube channels and Edpuzzle channels about how teachers do their videos, and it's always super techy, you know, like the worksheets and them writing on it. I was like, oh, that's creative. I should probably do that. But no, you know me, I like my whiteboards. Okay, so here we go. Next one is x squared minus 9x. And that's how they give it to you. Remember, you're going to complete the square, which that means new C. So plus a box. That's going to be your first answer. And then when you factor it, that's going to be your second answer. So there's two answers to this. All right. So when you complete it, new C. So C equals the quantity b over 2 squared. Because remember, you're taking half of b and squaring it. Parentheses, because you're going to do that part first. Don't forget your board of operations. All right. C equals b. B is it 9 or negative 9? Negative 9. Okay. So C is equal to negative 9 over 2, and we're going to square that. Okay. All right. Now, you can do this a couple different ways, but I want you to keep it easier for yourself. You could divide this and then square it, but then you're going to end up getting a decimal, because half of negative 9 is negative 4.5, and then you square that decimal. So when you have a fraction like this, keep it that way. And you're going to find out why here in a second. Just have faith in me. Keep it there. Okay? But we're going to do the math because we got to fill it in here. But remember, we're keeping our eye on here. So that's what I really meant to say. Sorry. So keep your eye on this. But we still are going to square it. And remember, just as a reminder, when you square something, you're multiplying it by itself. Don't forget that part. So negative 9 times negative 9 is an 81 over 4. So that's your new C. So this part goes up here. So plus 81 fourths. I didn't give myself much room right there. But that does say 81 fourths. So that's your new C. You have now just completed the square. It's actually a perfect square trinomial. All right. Now we're going to factor this. So, Ninja Star. A times C at the top, which is 81 fourths, which that doesn't sound like much fun to me. It's going to be okay. B at the bottom. AX and AX right here. So Ninja Star says you got to think of factors of 81 fourths that add up to negative 9. How about let's try this. So, you know, negative 9 halves is also equal to negative 4.5. Okay? So let's go negative 4.5 and negative 4.5. Well, if we already know that negative 4.5 times negative 4.5, which is the same thing as negative 9 halves, that multiplied together is 81 fourths. So we have the product. We're good there. But what's negative 4.5 and a negative 4.5? Negative 9. So we don't have to think of all these crazy factors and get all stressed out, because that's why I said keep your eye on this part right here. This becomes your factor. Ta-da! So then, remember, these two are your binomials. But since it's a perfect square trinomial, you're going to write it as the square of a binomial. And that's your other answer. So your first answer is when you complete the square, which is the new c right there. Second part is when you factor it. And you guys can keep this as -9/2 if you want. I don't care. Remember, you can always convert to fractions or decimals. This one or that one. Your call. Whatever's easiest for you. Okay, that says or. So why did this one get crazy with fractions and stuff like that? Looking at your notes, I want you guys to look at B in these last two problems. So B for this one was -9. B in the first one, I have to look over here, was 6. I'm going to tell you right now, it has nothing to do with the signs. The only thing it has to do with the signs is the fact that, you know, your linear term right here, there it is negative. That's it. What makes the difference, hopefully one of you guys figured this out. B is odd here. B is even in your first one. So when B is even, it works out pretty. There's none of this fraction stuff. When B is odd, then you have this fraction stuff. So when you actually complete the square, the whole process completing the square, it works best when B is even. And there's another one you're going to find out here what that is in a second. Okay? All right, let me do one more, and then we're going to go on to the whole process. And this video is going to be a little bit longer, but that's okay. That's okay. So let's go x squared. You know, I'll make it easy. Plus 10x. Okay? Maybe I'll do two more. I'll do one of when b is even, when b is odd. Okay? Because this is part of the whole process of completing the square. Okay? Here we go. So, new c plus, fill in the box. Okay? So we start with half of b, and then square it to get the new c. We're going to start there. C is equal to the quantity b, which is 10. So 10 cut in half is 5. And then 5 squared, 25. Okay. That's 25. 25. So this goes in that box. Okay. Because when I call off answers, I'll say something like C is this, and then, you know, the quantity, blah, blah, blah. Talk about that. Now we got to factor this. So you're factoring this guy. X squared plus 10x plus 25. Perfect square trinomial, which means you're going to end up with the square of a binomial. The factors are going to be the same. Same sign and everything. So C and B are both positives. So that tells you both factors are positive. X and X. So factors of 25 that add up to 10. And the factors have to be the same because it's a perfect square. 5 and 5. Which, if you kept your eye on something, it's right there. Do you still have to show this part? Of course you do. It's good math practice. You need to show your work because when you guys get into this higher math, you know, it's going to be a page and a half, okay? So always show the work. I know you can, some of you guys can do this in your head. Don't care. There we go. So remember, you're going to write it as a square of a binomial. So you have the quantity x plus 5 squared. So this is when you complete the square. That's your first answer. The second one is when you factor it and you write your answer as a square of a binomial. Last one, because then I got, you know what? I'm just going to do one because I'm looking at the time and I'm already at 15 minutes. And I don't want this video to be too long. Okay? All right. So now we're going to solve now by completing the square. So whole big process. Here we go. Example 2. Solve. And it says solve by completing the square, but I'm just putting solve. Okay? So we have x squared plus 8x minus 3 equals 17. It says solve by completing the square. Well, first thing first, you have to have your equation equals 0. So if your equations don't ever equal 0, you got to get this on the other side. So you're just going to move it. So how am I going to move this 17? You're going to subtract 17. Okay? Actually, no, we don't have to do that. mean, you can, but it's more work. I'm going to change it up a little bit. There are a couple ways you can do this. Forget what I just said. You can have them equal 0, but if you do, then you just have a little bit more work to do. So let's just kind of take that part out and let's get going. So when they give it to you, it doesn't matter if this equals 0 or not. The first thing you want to do is kick out the c that they give you. Because right now this trinomial x squared plus 8x minus 3 is not a perfect square. And that's the first step we need to do. We need to make this trinomial right here into a perfect square. So kick out this c. So add 3 here and add 3 here. So you have x squared plus 8x equals 20. Okay, so now we're good to go. Now we're x squared plus bx, which is part of our complete the square process. So now you are going to complete the square, which means complete the square, and then you're going to also factor. So here we go. So new c. Okay, I'm going to write steps over here. Here we go. C equals half of b, then square it. I keep forgetting to show you my board. So b is 8. Okay. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. Remember to keep your eye on that number. Okay. So at this point, we're going to add it back in just like we did in example 1. If you notice, I put plus something. Okay, you're going to do that. But since this is an equation, if you do it to this side, you have to do it to this side because it's an equation, and what you do to one side, the equal sign, you have to do the other. That is your basic principles of equality. So here we go. We have x squared plus 8x plus 16 equals 20 plus 16 again. Okay. First step, kick out their c. Second step, find new c. Add it back into both sides because it's an equation. What you do one side, do the other. Now factor. Okay, so you're going to factor the left and simplify the right. It doesn't matter what order you do that in. So here we go. You know it's going to be a perfect square triangle. You know the factors are the same, but you still have to show your ninja star. So 16 up here, 8 on the bottom, x and x. Yes, I am moving through that part faster because we've been doing this for a while. Your factors of 16 that add up to 8 that are the same. 4 and 4. Okay. Write that as a, whoops, x plus 4. I put x plus 2. Write that as a square of a binomial, just like you did in example 1. And then simplify that side. So 20 plus 16 is 36. Okay. Next. This should look like a problem you did yesterday. It was the last example I did on solving by square roots. Here's the other part. Okay. So now, we're going to start solving for x. First thing you're going to do is you're going to undo this square. Take the square root, but what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Okay? Principles of equality. This undoes itself. And you have x plus 4 equals, now the square root of 36, remember it's not just the positive, it's the positive and negative. So plus and minus 6. And now you set up your two problems and you solve and you're good. So you have x plus 4 equals 6. X plus 4 equals negative 6. As a reminder, if you don't like that sign, just put plus 6 and then put minus 6. You're good to go. All right, balance. X equals 2 here. That's one of your solutions. And then subtract 4 here. X equals 2 again. Weird. I did something wrong. Ah, sorry. I didn't see my negative sign. Negative 6 minus 4 is negative 10. I knew it couldn't be the same. That's why I was like, I did something wrong because I wasn't paying attention to my negative 6. So I have my solutions of 2 and negative 10. So what does it mean? Where the parabola crosses the x-axis. So the parabola is crossing at 2 and negative 10. Okay. So let's go over the process before we do another one, and then I will write the steps. First thing first, get rid of C. It doesn't matter what's over here. Forget what I said earlier. Get rid of their C. Okay, once that's over there, next step is to find a new C. After you found the new C, add it into both sides. That's where I am right here. I added it into the left and I added it into the right. Then you're going to factor the left, simplify the right. That's down here. I factored it, okay, as a square root binomial. Don't forget to write that in. And then you undo the square by taking the square root, balance and solve. And you've just solved this quadratic by completing the square. There you go. All right, another one. So one way that we know that completing the square works best is when b is even. That doesn't mean you can't do it when b isn't even. So just keep that in mind. And that's what I'm going to do right now. I just got to find a problem. They did not give you many odds. Okay, I'm going to do a different one because here's the other time that we need to know when completing the square is good for. So I have 2x squared plus 4x plus 10 equals 58. Okay. So I could technically call this example 3 because it's different, and here's why. Because you have a coefficient that's greater than 1 in front of x. So the other ... from when we started this, completing the square is best when b is even and a is 1. So anytime they ask you to complete the square when a is not 1, divide it out. You could do that. So we're going to divide everything here by 2 and everything over there by 2 because we want that coefficient of a to be 1. So here we go. 2x squared divided by 2 is x squared. Also, you're just factoring out a 2 of each term if you like that better. Some of you guys preferred the multiplication way. Some of you guys prefer the division way. So 4x divided by 2 plus 2x. 10 divided by 2 plus 5 equals 58 divided by 2. 29. Yep. There we go. Nice. Okay, now that a is 1, now we start the other process. So first thing first, get rid of their c. So kick that out. So we're going to undo that by subtracting 5 from both sides. So you have x squared plus 2x equals 29, take away 5, 24. Okay. Now that their c is gone, now we're going to find our new c. So here we go. New c time, which is example 1. So c equals half of b, then squaring that. Okay, so I'm just writing my little formula, and I kind of do it off to the side. So b is 2, half of 2, then squaring that. It's a lot of 2's. Half of 2 is 1. 1 squared, 1. Okay, so new c. Now we're going to add it back into both sides. So we have x squared plus 2x plus 1, that was the box that we used to make in example 1, equals 24 plus 1. We have to, if we do it over here, we have to do it over there. And by the way, this right there is the most common mistake kids will make, is they will forget to add it into both sides. So please make sure you do that. I mean, you could draw a fence if you wanted so you could see the equality part. Your call. Okay. All right, now, 2 things. Factor, simplify. It doesn't matter the order you go. If you want to simplify that first, sure, go equals 25. That's fine, doesn't matter. All right, factors of 1 that add up to 2 that happen to be the same number. C and B are both positive, so we have a plus 1 and a plus 1, which, there it is. So you're going to write this as a square of a binomial. Quantity x plus 1 squared equals 25. I haven't been showing my board as much. I apologize. Okay, now start solving for x. Undo the square by taking the square root. This undoes. So you have x plus 1 equals, remember, take the positive and negative. So plus and minus 5. All right, So then you have, I'm running out of room, x plus 1 equals 5, x plus 1 equals negative 5. Subtract 1 from both sides. You know, I'm just gonna do it on the board. You guys can do it in your notes. You know what you're doing. Cross that out. We get x equals 4. And then subtract 1, subtract 1. Negative 5 minus 1, negative 6. There it is. Okay, so don't forget plus and minus. So you have the positive and the negative negative 5. Been a long day. There you go. All right. Steps. I'm gonna write steps, and then we're gonna do one more problem, maybe, because video's already pretty long. Okay, so these are the steps to follow any problem. And just like when you balance an equation, sometimes you don't do all the steps because sometimes you don't have to distribute. Well, so on here, sometimes you don't have to divide. Okay, so here we go. Steps. So step 1, we had to get a to be 1. So let's go divide to make a equal 1. Kind of a weird way of saying that. But if you have, like 4x squared, then you're going to divide by 4. So you're going to divide to make a equal 1. So this step 1 is only applying to problems like the one we just did. Okay. Step 2, kick out their c. Okay. So if they give you x squared plus 4x plus 7, you're going to subtract that 7. So that's kicking out their c, because that's the one they gave you. Step 3, find new c. Okay. Half of b, squaring that. Next, step 4, add new c to both sides. Okay. I actually think writing out steps takes longer than solving the problem. Add new c to both sides. Step 5, factor the left and simplify the right. So you're going to factor the left, right is the square of binomial, and then when I say simplify the right, you're just adding the two numbers, because you have to add the number back in to the equation. That's why it says add new c. Okay. 6, so after you've factored the left and simplify the right, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to take square root of both sides. Seven, balance and solve. How many different equations are we going to have? 2. 2 equations. Now let's solve 2 equations. Up here, when I said take square root of both sides, I put the plus and minus in just as a reminder. Okay. And then here, balance and solve your 2 equations. That is where your 2 equation comes from, is your plus and minus when you take the square root of the number that's on the right-hand side. There you go. So now, do you always have to divide? No. You're only going to start with step 1 when a is greater than 1. Do I have to kick out their c? Not necessarily. I think the very first problem I did, I'm scrolling back. Oh, I did not. Oh, so like example 1. If they gave you a problem that says something like x squared plus, I don't know, 5x equals 12, they didn't have a c, so you wouldn't have to kick out their c. So you only do steps 1 and 2 if they're given to you. So if that's a is greater than 1, do that. If they gave you a c, get rid of that. Okay? And then the next step, this is going to apply to all problems. And step 3, that is where, that's example 1. That's where we started. So you can see example 1 is part of the process of completing the square when you solve a quadratic. Okay. So these are the steps. If you get stuck, ask someone next to you. Remember, do not get out of your seat. I've already warned the sub. Carrot. Think of the carrot. All right. I'm just going to double check, make sure we don't have anything. I just covered everything. I should probably do one when completing the square when B is odd. But you know, I'm going to do that in class. So on, what day? Thursday. On Thursday, I will do more of completing the square when B is odd. So that way you guys will have me in class so you can ask questions and that kind of a thing. Okay. So, third method on how to complete the square. We started with factoring. You could technically solve by graphing. We didn't really go over that. But when you graph, all you really do is you set it up by factoring. And then you sketch it. So anyways, solve by factoring, solve by square roots, solve by completing the square. Completing the square works for every single quadratic. It is best when used when B is even and A is 1. Okay? But it works for all of them. Square roots does not work for all quadratics. It only works when you have no linear term. Solve by factoring, that only works if you can factor the trinomial. Okay? There's one more method. Yep. That works for any single quadratic equation. So, all right. Have a good day. We'll see ya.